It happened so fast, no one had time to breathe. One moment, the chemistry lab buzzed with the usual chatter of teenagers. The next, a student named Dylan Ross had his hand wrapped tightly around Miss Naomi Harris's throat, slamming her against the wall. The glass beakers rattled, gas hissed from an open valve. Everyone froze, except for Miss Harris. The black woman's eyes didn't show fear. They didn't beg for help. They locked on Dylan, sharp, steady, unshaken, as if she'd stared down danger far greater than this, the kind that made his outburst look like child's play. And in the next 5 seconds, something happened that would end Dylan's future, turn the school upside down, and make everyone in that room rethink who Miss Harris really was. The first rays of the morning sun slipped weakly through the tall glass windows of Westbrook High as students trudged inside, their conversations filling the hallways like background noise. To most, it was just another ordinary day in the endless cycle of classes, assignments, and teenage gossip. But on the second floor, inside the chemistry lab, something was about to unfold that none of them would ever forget. A chain of events that would ruin reputations, shatter arrogance, and reveal the startling hidden past of a black woman who, until that moment, appeared to be nothing more than an ordinary teacher. Her name was Miss Naomi Harris, the new chemistry teacher who commanded silence from the moment she entered a room. Not fresh out of college, not yet old, she was in her mid-30s with a sharp gaze and a calm presence that kept students on edge. Whispers followed her through the halls, too strict, too cold, too mysterious. Her appearance only added to the talk. Long sleeves, even in summer, perfect posture like a soldier, and eyes that seemed to read minds. Some said she was divorced, others that she was lonely. A few whispered she had lived another life before Westbrook High. What none of them knew was that those rumors weren't as far-fetched as they seemed. But every classroom has one. The bully. The student who thinks he's untouchable, that rules don't apply, and that teachers are beneath him. At Westbrook, that student was Dylan Ross. The son of a wealthy businessman who practically owned half the city, Dylan walked the halls like he owned them too. Tall, broad-shouldered, and always wearing a smug grin, he mocked weaker students, shoved kids into lockers, and cheated on tests without fear of consequences. Teachers tolerated him or looked the other way because they didn't want to risk crossing his father's influence. But Miss Harris was different. She didn't stumble when he mocked her lessons. She didn't flinch when he raised his voice. Instead, she met him with eyes so piercing that for the first time in his life, Dylan felt uneasy. And Dylan Ross hated being uneasy. That uneasy feeling was why, on that Thursday morning in the chemistry lab, things began to spiral out of control. The class had been busy with an experiment, the air filled with the acrid scent of chemicals. At the back, Dylan leaned lazily against his workstation, arms folded across his chest, his friends snickering at his side. His smirk grew as he raised his voice so the entire class could hear, "Hey, Miss Harris," he sneered. "Are you really a teacher or just playing dress-up to cover the rent?" Nervous laughter rippled through the room. Everyone knew Dylan's routine: provoke, mock, humiliate until the target broke. Miss Harris didn't give him the satisfaction. Without glancing in his direction, she said evenly, "Focus on your experiment, Dylan. Your solution is about to overheat." The calm dismissal landed harder than any insult. Dylan's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to people brushing him off. Normally, teachers stammered or gave in, but she had shut him down with a single sentence. "Don't tell me what to do," he snapped, his voice cutting through the chatter. "You're not my boss. My dad pays your salary." Have you ever seen someone so drunk on power they believed their parents' money gave them control over everyone else? What would you do if you were the one being challenged in front of a full classroom? Before we go any further, what city or country are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments. We love seeing where our viewers are tuning in from. And if you believe no amount of wealth should excuse arrogance, smash that like button and subscribe to Story Arc for stories that prove respect is earned, not bought. The room went silent. A few students tried to cover their grins, while others simply froze, waiting to see how Miss Harris would respond. She turned slowly, her sharp eyes locking onto Dylan. That stare was colder than ice, sharper than steel. He shifted, suddenly uncomfortable, but forced a grin to hide it. "You might believe your father's money controls this school. she said, her tone steady and deliberate, each word carrying weight. But in this classroom, science and discipline rule. Sit down. Her voice carried a finality that felt immovable, like a wall Dylan couldn't push through. For a brief second, his confidence faltered, his heartbeat skipping. But pride was poison, and Dylan had swallowed too much of it over the years. His friends were watching. The class was watching. He couldn't back down. With a scowl, he slammed his notebook shut and stood. "Or what?" he demanded, stepping closer. "What are you going to do if I don't sit down?" Her voice didn't waver, didn't rise. But there was a dangerous edge in it, something forged in fire and experience, that made several students straighten unconsciously in their seats. Dylan, blinded by arrogance, mistook her composure for weakness. His temper flared, and in a reckless burst of defiance, he crossed a line no student should ever think of crossing. He lunged forward, grabbed Miss Harris by the throat, and slammed her hard against the counter. A chorus of gasps filled the room. Chairs screeched against the floor as students stood in shock. A few fumbled for their phones, but for that single heartbeat, time itself seemed frozen. Dylan's hand pressed against her neck, his face twisted in smug triumph. "What now, huh?" he spat, his grip tightening. "What are you gonna do now?" But then something shifted. Miss Harris's eyes didn't widen in fear, they narrowed. In that instant, the facade of the quiet black teacher dissolved, and what stood before them was something far more formidable. Years of training, discipline, and combat buried beneath her calm surface surged to life. Her hand snapped upward like lightning, seizing Dylan's wrist in a grip of iron. His smirk faltered, unease flashing across his face. Before he could react, her other hand struck his elbow, bending it in a direction nature never intended. A strangled cry tore from his throat as the pain shot through him, his hold instantly weakening. In one swift motion, she twisted free, spun behind him, and locked his arm tightly behind his back. Dylan's body slammed against the counter with a resounding thud that echoed through the lab like thunder. The room froze, every student wide-eyed, their mouths hanging open in disbelief. Miss Harris hadn't simply defended herself. She had moved with a precision and force that no ordinary teacher could have possessed. The way she held him down spoke of training and experience none of them could fathom. Leaning close, her voice dropped to a deadly whisper that carried across the silence. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Dylan thrashed, but the harder he fought, the tighter her hold became. His friends stayed rooted in their spots, fear etched on their faces. Nobody dared move. For the first time in his life, Dylan Ross wasn't the one in control. He was prey, caught in the grip of a predator he hadn't even seen coming. "Apologize." The single word cracked through the air like a whip. Miss Harris's tone was low but carried absolute authority. Dylan groaned, squirming under her grip, but the pressure on his arm only grew tighter. "Say it," she ordered again, her voice edged with steel. The boy who had spent years terrorizing classmates and laughing in the faces of teachers was trembling now, sweat rolling down his temple. His arrogance had been stripped away in seconds. I'm sorry," he stammered, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry." Only then did Miss Harris release him. With a shove, she pushed him forward. Dylan stumbled, clutching his arm, his once confident face pale and humiliated. The classroom stayed silent. No one dared laugh. No one even dared whisper. Every eye was fixed on her, the black woman who had stood against Dylan Ross and dismantled him with terrifying precision. Miss Harris adjusted the cuffs of her blouse calmly, standing tall once more, her expression controlled. But in her eyes, something darker stirred, a storm hinting at a past none of them could comprehend. She looked at the stunned students and said simply, "Class dismissed." At first, nobody moved. Then slowly, one by one, students gathered their books and slipped out of the room, their glances darting nervously between Dylan, still nursing his arm, and Miss Harris, who stood like a soldier returning to rest. That day, whispers spread through Westbrook High like wildfire. The teacher wasn't just a teacher. She was something else, something dangerous. Dylan Ross, the untouchable bully, had been broken in front of everyone. And it hadn't taken empty threats or begging. It had taken skill, precision, and a presence that could not be ignored. Deep inside, Dylan knew his life had just changed in a way he could never undo. His arrogance, his shield of power, had been shattered by the one person he underestimated. Because Miss Naomi Harris's past wasn't a rumor at all. It was real, and that reality had just crushed him in front of the entire class. Moments like this remind us money can buy influence, but it can't buy true respect.